Howdy y'all, and welcome into the Chill With Clayton Extras. We're so happy to have y'all today. Some of y'all enjoyed our top 10 Veggietales Silly Songs episode, so we decided to make a follow-up known as my top 10 Veggietales episodes.
If you like to talk to tomatoes, if a squash can make you smile, if you like to waltz with potatoes, up and down,
and so on and so on and so on.
Lord of the Beans. Now you might be asking me, what in the world is Lord of the Beans? Well, hint the name, Lord of the Beans, Lord of the Rings. Now, I'm not much of a J.R. Tolkien fan myself. Okay, yeah, Lord of the Rings fans, go ahead and throw tomatoes at me, but not Bob the Tomato, please. But still, I mean, but this story is so good. It follows Junior Asparagus, as he's known as Toto Baggy Pants. Yes, that is his actual name, Toto Baggy Pants. But the story about it, though, is about finding, like, your skill or your talent that God kind of gave to you. And it's kind of a cool concept of how, like, they use the Lord of the Rings story, but in that kind of thing. And Veggietales is known to do that. I mean, they did a couple different ways. I mean, they did one about the Wonderful Wizard of Oz called The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and there's some other ones, but, like, it's really cool how Veggietales, like, uses pop culture media, but they'll be able to, like, simplify it into cool little Bible stories for kids. Like, it's really cool to see that. Pretty cool. Go check out Lord of the Beans. I mean, it also has a silly song featuring Larry as Elvis. Yes, he's an elf and he's portraying Elvis. So, hint that. So, pretty cool, pretty cool.
Veggietales, Veggietales.
Moving on to number 9, and that is known as a Snoodle's Tale. Now, a Snoodle's Tale is about this Snoodle who recently just came out of a slide. Yes, that is the actual way that they came out. They just came out of slides. You know, birth, I guess, but I don't know. That's just Veggietales logic. But, yeah, the Snoodle comes in and he's given this bag and he's like, what am I supposed to use this for? Like, what am I going to use this for? And he sees, like, this paintbrush, and he's like, maybe I can do this. But, like, the other Snoodles start laughing at him, going like, man, you look like one of the goofiest Snoodles ever. Like, haha, that looks so funny. And this Snoodle just feels so depressed, and he's just like, man, like, everyone thinks I'm a goofball and all that. And it's honestly something that a lot of people really need to know, like, being yourself, man, just being yourself. And there's this voice that talks to him, of course, that's known as portraying of God in this case, and it's like, let me show you this, and let me show you how you look to me. And it's just him with a big old smiling face, like, so happy, having his wings spread out, because in the story he can't quite fly yet, but at the end he flies because and you'll see this in the story, but the other Snoodles pack these pictures of him, and it weighs heavy on him. It weighs this burden on him, and he gets to get that one picture and he puts it in there, and he just feels that burden just carried off, and knowing how the way God looks at him, and it's really cool. And then there's another story called Dr. Jiggle and Mr. Sly, and it's like, how about, like, how you're special the way God made you. I mean, that's the main thing that they talk about, and it's this, I believe it's Jerry or Jimmy Gord, and he's like this really good dancer at night. He's this really good dancer, and people are like, who is this, like, guy? Who is this Dr. Jiggle? And then they find out it's him, and he feels embarrassed, like, how, like, man, like, now I'm known as the dancing guy, but, like, everyone loved his dancing, and, like, they didn't want him to feel embarrassed about it, and it's pretty cool.
Veggietales, Veggietales.
Moving on to number 8, and that is an Easter Carol, and an Easter Carol is about Mr. Nezer. And now, Mr. Nezer, we'll actually mention him a little later in the in this top 10 list because his other episode shows up. But in this one, he's the main focus as he wants to build this thing called Easterland. And it's the main topic that everyone thinks about Easter. The candy, the eggs, the glitz, the glamour, all the eggs and the egg hunting and the gifts and all that. And like Mr. Nezer's thinking about that, all about that. But his grandma, who passed away, but she ends up coming in a vision on him and tells him that he's going to be visited by an angel, by a spirit. And it's kind of like when you hear an Easter Carol, it's pretty much based on the Charles Dickens story, A Christmas Carol, but just in an Easter format. And we meet Hope, who is trying to redirect Mr. Nezer's like thing and like what he missed in the past, and like knowing that the hope of Easter ain't about eggs, it's about Jesus and how he died on the cross for our sins and gave us another chance at life. He gave this other chance, and it's really cool. But like in the other side plots, you have Cavis and Millward, who we meet later on in one of the episodes I'll talk about later on in the list. And they're working for Mr. Nezer, and they're seeing this, and they're trying to stop him from building Easterland. All the other people are trying to make sure that Mr. Nezer doesn't build Easterland, and it kind of follows along that Christmas Carol kind of format, and you kind of know the deal. Mr. Nezer, well, I'll let you watch the episode from there. Veggietales. Number 7 is Mo in the Big Exit. Now, this is about the story of Moses, but this is kind of in the same universe as another episode that I'll mention later on. But this follows Mo, who, of course, was this kid that was put in, all the boys were put in the Nile River because of Pharaoh. But Pharaoh's daughter ends up seeing him and ends up raising him in the palace, where it is this case is in Dodge City, because this is a western, hint the name Mo in the Big Exit, but it's like this western version of a tale of Moses, and it's really cool. Like, you get all the different aspects of Moses' story. Yeah, the 10 plagues, it's there. The snake and the staff, it's there. All the story of Moses, and it's just implemented in a western, and it's pretty cool. Veggietales. And then number 6, Minnesota Cuke in the Search for Samson's Hairbrush. This has kind of got that Indiana Jones feel. If you're a fan of Indiana Jones, you're going to like these. Minnesota Cuke is Larry portraying the role of Minnesota Cuke, and he's trying to figure out where the whereabouts are of Samson's hairbrush, and we get to follow along that story and how he makes up with one of his old rivals, and it's a really cool story, and it's about it's a lesson about dealing with bullies, which is a big topic for a lot of kids. And then we have the other side story with Junior Asparagus and how this big bully's just like got control of the playground, but Junior's trying to implement the courage to like say, hey, like this is right, like man, like everybody belongs on the playground. And now we'll move on to number 5. Veggietales. Number 5 is King George and the Ducky. Now, as you all know, I actually mentioned about this episode actually in our last week Chill With Clayton episode. By the way, you can go check that out on our YouTube channel, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. I know that was a cheap, shameless plug, but oh well. But as I was saying, but King George and the Ducky is actually about King David's affair with Bathsheba. Yes, that was a story in Veggietales, but instead it's about Larry being King George and Junior Asparagus having this ducky, and he wants his ducky in this case. And that story of David like implements in there, and it's a really good, just powerful, just story about, you know, just not being selfish, man. Like, I mean, and then there's also the other story, which is the Englishman who went up the hill and got all the bananas. And yes, that's because Jimmy and Jerry hosted the episode. Or is that Lyle the Kindly Viking? I unfortunately can't remember, but both of those episodes are pretty good, so yeah. Moving on to number 4, that is the Star of Christmas. And that is actually the prequel to An Easter Carol, but the Star of Christmas is about Cavis and Millward. Cavis Apethard and Millward Phelps. Cavis is played by Bob the Tomato, and then Millward is played by Larry the Cucumber, and it's about them wanting to set up this Christmas pageant and all that, but they find out at the same time that there's this pageant of about Jesus' life when he gets born in Bethlehem going on at the church. And then there's this thing known as the Star of Christmas that's really famous and popular, and it's gonna make everyone go to the church. So Cavis and Millward think, well, we need to get the Star of Christmas, and we just need to borrow it so we can use it for our show. And I'll let you watch the rest of the story, but it's it kind of gets into where we are in An Easter Carol, but it's a really good story about Christmas. A lot of good comedic, fun moments in there, and it's just a really great story. And I think it's the best Veggietales Christmas special that they have. Veggietales. Number 3 is Dave and the Giant Pickle. Continuing on the story of David, this is about, let me just sing Junior Asparagus' song. I'm little, but he's bigger. With God's help, little guys can do big things too. And you know the rest of the lyrics if you watch Veggietales, but what I meant was he's big, but God's bigger. But you know what I meant. But it's about Junior, and he's portraying King David in this, King David, but not yet, just David in this case. And it's about the story, of course, that a lot of people know, David and Goliath. And if you know the story, you know how it's going to fold and kind of go through there. Great, just another great episode from Veggietales. And Veggietales. Now moving on to my top 2. Number 2 is Rack, Shack, and Benny, and this is after the Bible story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And it's just another fantastic story, but it's instead Rack, Shack, and Benny work for Mr. Nezer nonetheless in his chocolate factory. But Mr. Nezer asks all the kids, hey, you can eat chocolate as much as you want. But Junior, who's playing I think it's Shaq in this case, and he tells Rack and Benny, hey, guys, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be doing this. Look, remember what our parents told us. And then, of course, you have that great song, stand up for what you believe in, believe in God, He's the one to back you up. You know the rest of the lyrics, but it's another fantastic story, and it follows that Bible story so well. Going into some honorable mentions, Minnesota Cuke and the Search for Noah's Umbrella. That is the sequel to Minnesota Cuke and the Search for Samson's Hairbrush. Kind of follows along the same plot, but it's Larry trying to find out about Noah's Umbrella and trying to defend it from Professor Rattan, who was his rival at the during Minnesota Cuke and the Search for Noah's Umbrella, but from his evil twin brother, Wicker, who's wanting Noah's umbrella. But I'll let you watch the rest of the story, but it's a good one. Larry Boy and the Bad Apple, which is about temptation, which that is a big topic for a lot of people, and it was quite the topic that Veggietales went after, and I think it's a great episode and has a lot of fun comedic moments, but it's a topic that I think a lot of people need to listen about. Next one is Larry Boy and the Fib from Outer Space, and that's another one. I mean, lying can be very huge, and Junior ends up telling a fib, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. And one of my favorite lines from the episode is when Larry calls it Alfred in this case. So yes, Larry Boy is a parody of Batman. but he goes, how do I defeat this fib? And then Alfred goes, you can do nothing. And Larry's like, what? I can do nothing? What am I supposed to do? And it's such a great episode. And then my other honorable mention is the first episode of the series, which is Where's God When I'm Scared? And it's just a great pilot episode, and talks about how Junior is dealing with fears, and going with that is Larry and Bob have to have help saving their ship, the SS Apple Pies. And yes, the spaceship is shaped like an apple pie, and they have to save it. So it's pretty cool. And then also about the Bible story of Daniel in the lion's den. But moving on to ba ba da ba 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 da ba 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 da ba 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 da 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 dee 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 da dee da dee 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 da dee da dee 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 da dee da.
Get on with it.
Yes, get on with it! Get on with it!
Veggietales, Veggietales.
Yes, I stole that from the Krusty Krab training video. I had to use it. But number one is the Ballad of Little Joe, and man, it's a great episode. It's the first part of the Western episodes that Veggietales did. The countertop scene is hilarious, where this Bob's trying to answer the question for a kid, but Larry's answering a question from a kid that wants a Western story, and you hear this famous little counteract where Bob goes, "We need to tell a Bible story." No, he needs a Western, Bob. A Bible story. A Western, Bob. And then they finally compromise and make the Ballad of Little Joe, which is about the story of Joseph in the Bible. And another great story takes place once again in Dodgeball City, with Larry portraying Little Joe, and how like he went through. It goes through the story of Joseph, but how Little Joe kind of got raised into the town, how he kind of rose up the ranks, but he still forgave his brothers even though they sold him to desperados. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed my top 10 Veggietales episodes, and yeah, so remember, give this video a like, and a follow, and a share on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you're listening on our audio formats. And yeah, go also check out our verses on the Chill With Clayton Instagram page, and hope y'all have a very great day. As I always say, don't mess with Texas. Keep Jesus first. God bless. I will see y'all later. Adios, amigos. Yeehaw!